It's February of 2019, and this means we got a new Patreon requested topic. This month's topic comes from the best kind of waffle, buttermilk. And buttermilk would like to know my top 5 old school JRPGs that need to be remade, remastered, re-released, whatever. So, first off, because I know you guys are sick of hearing about it, Legend of Dragoon would be my heavily nostalgia-driven number 1, but I'm going to exclude it from the list to bring some hopefully less predictable things. Most of you already know I don't really address these lists as top 5s or 10s or anything, but rather just 5 games in no particular order. And trust me, there's a lot more than 5 that I could put here. But to not make a video overstay its welcome, 5 is where we are drawing the line until I decide to do a part 2. I also don't exactly know where the cutoff point for old school is anymore, and chances are I'm going to go way past it. But hell, here's 5 games I want to see re-released, remastered, reworked, remade, or whatever. Number 5, Xenogears. Making an appearance on every list I ever make, I guess. Don't get me wrong, folks, I love Xenogears, but more and more I see new people struggling to get into the game, and honestly, it doesn't surprise me. If you look at the way the sprites are mixed with the 3D environments, especially on camera rotations, it looks really wonky. On top of that, the battle system maybe doesn't develop at a consistent enough pace for people, or even really let people know how close they are to unlocking their next combos. On simple grounds like that, I would say Xenogears could use a remake. But there is one other big thing I think could justify a full-on, from-the-ground-up remake. Anybody who's ever played Xenogears, and many who have only ever heard of it, can tell you about Disc 2. As it was, the money to complete this game was being siphoned off towards the end of its development, and Disc 2 was broken down to basically become a visual novel of sorts, with bits and pieces of dungeons and battles sprinkled throughout. The exposition dumps were heavy here, and the plot progression was rushed and a bit confusing. Dungeons that would have existed never did, and interactions that would have been cool to see were never constructed. If Xenogears could get a remake that would build out Disc 2 the way it was meant to be, I think Xenogears fans around the world would rejoice. Even fans like myself who didn't particularly even mind how Disc 2 was presented. And while we're at it, why don't you guys make an English translation of Perfect Works available for purchase? Just saying. Number 4. Maybe I shouldn't be doing any of these as collections, but it just feels right. A Lufia collection is long overdue. While I would prefer to see a collection like this contain the original ROMs completely unaltered, this is a game I would largely like to see remade as well, and would prefer both the untouched and reworked versions to be present on one cartridge and be interchangeable at the press of a button, Halo Anniversary style. Most of the game looks and functions fine, honestly, but at least for Lufia 1, I'd like to see the battle systems presentation reworked. Main character animations in the game can be pushed a lot further, and the heads-up display can be cleaned a great deal more. Add some more animation to the enemy sprites too, so we can get these big, beautiful bastards to have just a little more life breathed into them. Being able to put battle on camera angles that aren't the static front on camera used in every battle in this game would be great as well, as this tends to feel sterile really fast. Maybe drop in a couple quality of life mechanics to better keep track of what's going on and where you're going next, and we got a stew on. Also, optional reorchestrated music. The music in this game is one of the biggest reasons I want this brought back to a modern audience, especially for Rise of the Sinistrals. I love this game's OST, but if it is reorchestrated, it needs to be able to be switched back to the retro version for those who want it. Number 3. Technically not a Japanese-made game, this might not fit some people's definition of what a JRPG is, but Shadow Madness, originally for the PlayStation 1, does contain all the hallmarks most of us have come to associate with the genre. This was not a good game. At least, in my opinion. It was one of the first RPGs I played growing up that I beat from start to finish, and I just wasn't drawn in by it. But it had so many good or interesting ideas that I think could have worked if properly executed. This game needs a full-on remake. Not a port, not a remaster, a full remake. It used a battle system similar to Chrono Cross's light, medium, and heavy attack choices, but it was too imbalanced to ever have to use it strategically. Guarded attacks were weak but had a high chance to hit. Normal attacks had a good chance to hit, but if you hit X while the strike animation was happening, you would double your damage output. Aggressive attacks do high base damage with a low chance to hit, but there's no way to make them deal as much damage as your double damage normal attacks. So that basically means normal attacks are the only attacks attacks that you need to beat the game. This definitely needs some work. Shadow Madness was also loaded with mini-games that introduced new genres similar to how Kingdom Hearts has its gummy ship missions. Like everything else in the game though, it's too light for its own good and not executed well enough to be that exciting. The art direction I think needs to be reworked entirely, as character models, especially for the humans, are simply ugly. But a lot of the concept designs were really attractive. I mean, just look at this guy. The dude is a barrel. I just think this is awesome. Some of the locations had some real inspiration behind them, and with some possibly more melodramatic writing, the story can be made to be a lot more interesting than it was. This game originally got funding from a lot of different studios, including Squaresoft. However, as the budget kept going up and the product kept not really improving, nearly every interested studio dropped out. Nobody wants a remake of this game as it was, but I want a remake to show us what this game could have been. I don't think companies like Square were interested because there's nothing here. I think they were interested because there was something here, and it just couldn't be delivered on. Shadow Madness needs another chance, and I'd be willing to give it a new try after a full-on remake that fully delivers on all the ideas the original game tried to employ. Number 2. Vagrant Story. This game still holds up remarkably well in terms of its visuals. The presentation of the game is absolutely astounding, and the depths of its mechanics for the time are shocking. However, it was way ahead of its time, and unfortunately, at the time, they didn't know how to handle all of these mechanics with grace. Vagrant Story needs a remake, but a remake that will still appreciate the art style and atmosphere of the original game. What makes this require a remake in my eyes is simply how cumbersome it is to learn and play. When doing battle, there is an insane checklist you must accomplish before you can properly deal damage to enemies and survive enemy hits. This isn't just limited to buffs and debuffs that you have to cast at the start of battle, but it also extends to the weapons and armor you have equipped and the gems that you have slotted into said weapons and armor. Stopping battle to test 5 different loadouts is cumbersome. It's all micromanaging in menus that totally breaks the flow of battle and takes forever to navigate. If this could be reworked into a weapon wheel system where you can place preloaded weapons and gem loadouts to be cycled through on the fly during battle, this could smooth the whole thing out. More camera freedom will need to be added to help with the platforming sections, and the crafting system. My god, the crafting system. There is a lot you can do with the crafting system, however, it's very unclear how half of it works, and if you're using items that you have in storage, it requires multiple time-consuming saves and loads every time you access the storage chest. All of this can be fixed. Put Nomura in charge of this. We'll have a Vagrant Story remake ready in time for Christmas 2030, but at least we'll have it. Number 1. Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean. Though Monolith worked on many games before Xenoblade, I don't feel their games were fully appreciated or realized prior to that. Even the Xenosaga trilogy, I feel, got less attention than it perhaps deserved. However, Baten Kaitos has to be one of the more criminally overlooked games, and that may be a result of it simply being a GameCube exclusive at the time, or a result of a rather odd card-based battle system where moves take an eternity to play out, and some exceptionally awful voice acting to boot.
Hey, relax. You won't catch me off guard this time.
But if you could play past that back in the day, then there is no doubt that what you found here was something to be cherished. From its lovable characters, its unique battle system, and its stunning world design, there was so much originality here that deserves to not be left behind with the times. I'd love to see this game remade from the ground up, but with extra attention given to maintaining the original designs of each location. To see these areas again rebuilt in a crisp 1080p or higher, running at a smooth 60 FPS would be like a dream come true. The battle system I think could be streamlined a bit, and animation for playing out moves could be made to be much faster. And I think some quality of life mechanics could be patched in without upsetting the meta of the game much at all. With battle, all of your moves are cast with cards, as is all of your item usage, so maintaining and preparing a good deck loadout is a huge part of the game's design. It's very much like building decks in Magic the Gathering, but some cards have a shelf life. For instance, fruit can become rotten fruit if you don't use it in time. When I played this game as a kid, coming up against the final boss, I had a lot of rotten fruit in my deck, and it made it very difficult to overcome that last obstacle. Keeping track of my waste cards was something I struggled with in this game before, and I think it could be addressed better in a remake. Also, maybe revoice the game. Keep the originals, but make a new one optional. I know some people would miss the old cheesy voice acting, but it does need to happen. I would also love to see some scenes reworked into pre-rendered cutscenes rather than regular conversations or in-game animation, as the GameCube's storage limitations prevented this before. Really, there is a lot that you could do with this game as a remake, and a lot that should be done with it. Monolith, being what they are now, would get the recognition they deserved before if they were to remake this title today. And honestly, I hope they do. I love me my Xenoblade and all, but Monolith's Hidden Gem series, Baten Kaitos, deserves more love. And hell, maybe if this could do well, we could get a remake of Baten Kaitos Origins as well. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, 5 JRPGs that I think need a remake, or at the very least an enhanced re-release, to shed some new light on them, lest they become forgotten or otherwise too undesirable for new players to go back to. There's loads of other games I'd like to see reworked and re-released, like the Fire Emblem games from GameCube and Wii, maybe Tactics Ogre, the original Shadow Hearts and Dark Cloud games, a Shining Force collection that actually includes the third game and onward. But this is where we're leaving it today. Those were my 5 choices. I'm sure you all got a lot more. Let me know what you'd like to see down in the comments below. Thank you, Patreon, for the suggested topic. If you guys want to suggest topics, consider supporting the show on Patreon. As always, folks, thanks for watching.